They say marriage is a journey, but no one warns you that sometimes the journey takes place without you. For 7 years, I believed that love was about quiet moments, Sunday mornings with tea, walking hand in hand at the market, laughing at silly jokes only we understood. My wife, Yvonne, used to say I was her safe place. But safe, apparently, can also mean boring. The day she told me I was too boring to join her rich friends on their trip, I laughed, at first. I thought she was teasing. But when she left me behind, packed in designer clothes I couldn't afford, and boarded a flight without so much as a kiss goodbye, something inside me shifted. I decided if I wasn't exciting enough for her company, maybe I'd become unforgettable in my own way. And it began with me booking the exact same trip she'd dreamed of, alone. It started a week before the trip. We were in the kitchen. Yvonne was sipping her imported coffee, scrolling through her phone. "Babe," she said casually, "you don't have to worry about next week. It's just me and the girls. You know how you don't like all that luxury stuff." I frowned. "Luxury stuff?" She smiled, that tight smile she gives when she's being polite but condescending. "You're comfortable. And my friends like adventure. Wild nights. It's just not your scene." I wanted to argue, but I didn't. Instead, I listened to her talk about the 5-star resort, the yacht parties, the networking she'd do with her friends' husbands. By the time she left the room, my stomach was in knots. That night, I stared at our wedding photo, her laughing, me looking at her like she hung the moon. But now, I couldn't ignore it, the distance between us had been growing for months. Her friends, all polished, wealthy, and loud, had a way of making me feel like the invisible one in the room. I worked as an accountant, they ran businesses, flew to Paris for lunch, bought handbags worth my monthly salary. By morning, I'd made my decision. If I was too boring for her world, I'd show her just how boring could be. I used the small savings I'd been keeping aside for our anniversary and booked myself into the same resort, same flights, same itinerary. The day of her departure, Yvonne wore a silk white dress, gold hoops in her ears, and that perfume I'd bought her from Cape Town. She barely looked at me when the Uber pulled up. "Don't wait up," she said, as if she was just heading out for drinks, not for a week-long vacation without me. 2 hours later, I was on my own way to the airport, my heart pounding. The plan was simple, I wouldn't approach her directly, not yet. I'd let her see me when she least expected it. When I arrived at the coastal resort in Zanzibar, it was everything she'd described, white sand stretching for miles, turquoise water shimmering under the sun, and villas with infinity pools spilling into the horizon. The staff welcomed me like royalty, pressing a cool towel into my hand. "Mr. N. George, your villa is ready," the concierge smiled. That first evening, I kept to myself. I dined alone, watching the sunset while couples clinked glasses nearby. Then, across the open-air restaurant, I saw her, Yvonne. She sat with 3 women, all in flowing dresses, their laughter high-pitched and tipsy. A man I didn't recognize leaned in close to her, whispering something that made her blush. My chest tightened. But instead of storming over, I sipped my drink and turned away. Over the next few days, I became an observer. I swam early in the mornings, before she woke. I took boat rides, explored hidden markets in Stone Town, learned the stories of fishermen and spice traders. Every now and then, I'd catch glimpses of her group, always surrounded by noise and excess. One afternoon, I found myself on a snorkeling trip, the same one Yvonne had been talking about for weeks before she left. When I boarded the small yacht, my breath caught. There she was, standing at the rail, her dress whipping in the wind. She didn't see me, yet. I stayed at the opposite end, listening to the guide explain the coral reefs. In the water, I swam among schools of fish, the sun turning everything gold. And that's when I realized. I felt free. Away from her judgment, her friend's wealth, the labels of boring and safe, I was just me. But freedom doesn't last forever. It was on the 4th night that everything shifted. The resort hosted a beach bonfire, music, dancing, seafood grilled under the stars. I sat alone near the edge, watching the flames throw shadows across the sand. Then, a voice behind me. Daniel? I turned. Yvonne stood there, barefoot, holding a glass of champagne. Her eyes widened in shock. What are you doing here? I smiled. Just enjoying the luxury stuff you said I wouldn't like. She laughed, but it wasn't warm. This is weird. Did you follow me? I booked the same trip. Thought it might be fun, I said, my tone casual but my heart hammering. Her friends hovered behind her, whispering. One of them, a tall woman in diamonds, smirked. Guess he's not so boring after all. Yvonne's face tightened. Daniel, can we talk? Alone? We walked down the beach, the sound of waves masking our voices. This is embarrassing, she said. You showing up like this? My friends think you're stalking me. Is that what you tell them? That I'm some dull man who doesn't belong in your world? Her silence was answer enough. Finally, she sighed. You don't understand, Daniel. These trips, they're about connections. About living big. You're comfortable with routine. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not enough for you, I finished. She looked away. That night, I lay in my villa, staring at the ceiling fan. Maybe she was right. Maybe I wasn't enough. But something about the way that stranger leaned toward her, the way she laughed like she used to with me. It gnawed at me. The next morning, I woke before dawn and went for a walk along the shore. That's when I saw it, Yvonne, slipping out of her villa, dressed in a red wrap dress, heading toward a speedboat anchored just offshore. The man from the restaurant, tall, tanned, wearing a white linen shirt, was waiting. I ducked behind a palm tree, my pulse racing. They spoke briefly, then he helped her aboard. The boat roared to life, cutting across the water toward the open sea. For hours, I couldn't focus. My breakfast went untouched. I kept imagining where they might be going, what they might be doing. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately, another part wanted to keep watching, to understand what had really been happening behind my back. By the time she returned, sunburned, her hair tangled from the wind, she avoided my gaze entirely. She disappeared into her villa without a word. That evening, I decided to take control of my own story. If she thought I was boring, she'd soon learn how wrong she was. The resort offered an exclusive island-hopping cruise, champagne, music, chef cooking fresh lobster on board. It was the very trip Yvonne had been talking about for months before she left. I booked the last available spot. When I stepped onto the yacht the next morning, I felt a strange mix of nerves and excitement. The sea breeze was cool against my face, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was writing my own chapter. What I didn't know was that this trip, the one she'd dreamed of, was about to unravel everything we thought we knew about each other, and about our marriage. Because before the day was over, a truth would surface that neither of us could ever take back. The yacht glided over glassy water, its white hull cutting through waves like a blade. Around me, couples and small groups lounged with drinks in hand, their laughter blending with the soft rhythm of the ocean. I stayed near the railing, letting the salt air sting my skin. It didn't take long for me to spot her. Yvonne stepped onto the deck from the lower cabin, wearing a flowing white dress that clung to her frame in the wind. But she wasn't alone, the same man from before followed, a hand resting lightly on her lower back. I froze. They hadn't noticed me yet. My fingers curled around the railing. The man was younger than me, maybe by 7 or 8 years. Expensive watch, sunglasses that probably cost more than my entire outfit. He whispered something in her ear, and she laughed, that same laugh I used to get when we were newly married. I told myself not to make a scene. This wasn't the place. But the idea of spending the rest of the trip pretending not to see what was happening, it churned my stomach. The yacht anchored near a secluded island. Guests were ferried ashore on smaller boats to explore the beach and eat lunch under shaded canopies. I stayed behind until most had gone, watching her from a distance. She and the man walked along the waterline, their hands brushing. At one point, he stopped and took something out of his pocket, a silver necklace. He fastened it around her neck while she tilted her head, smiling softly. That was it. I marched down the sand toward them. Her eyes widened when she saw me. Daniel. I didn't realize this was part of the luxury experience, I said, my voice low but sharp. The man looked between us, clearly uncomfortable. You two know each other? She's my wife, I answered. The air seemed to thicken. Yvonne's smile vanished. Daniel, this isn't what it looks like. I let out a bitter laugh. Really? Because it looks exactly like what it is. The man raised his hands. Look, I didn't know. Save it, I cut in. My attention was on her. You left me because I was too boring, but the truth is, you'd already checked out of our marriage. This whole trip, you just wanted freedom. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You don't understand. I was tired. Tired of the routine, tired of feeling like life was slipping past us. She glanced at the man. He made me feel alive again. The words stung like salt in a wound. I didn't respond. I just turned and walked back toward the canopy, leaving her standing in the sun. Back on the yacht, I stayed away from her. But as the island receded into the horizon, I realized something. I wasn't angry in the way I thought I'd be. I was done. That night, I packed my bags and left the resort without telling her. I booked an earlier flight home, the hum of the plane's engine drowning out the chaos in my head. When I landed, I didn't go to our apartment. I went to my brother's place. By the time Yvonne returned 2 days later, I had already drafted the divorce papers. What I didn't expect was her showing up at my brother's door the next morning, eyes swollen, dress wrinkled, carrying the same designer bag she'd taken on the trip. Daniel, she whispered. Something happened after you left. And as she stepped inside, I realized the story wasn't over. She stood in my brother's living room, twisting the strap of her bag in her hands. Her eyes darted to the floor, unable to meet mine. What happened? I asked, my voice steady, though my heart thudded in my chest. She took a shaky breath. After you left, that man, Kevin, he wasn't who I thought he was. I folded my arms. Go on. She began to pace. He wasn't rich. Not really. He was using me, using all of us. He said he had business connections in Zanzibar, but it was a lie. On the last night, he borrowed money from one of my friends for a deal. Then he vanished. The necklace, fake. My friend's money, gone. A bitter part of me wanted to laugh, but I didn't. Instead, I leaned back against the couch. So the luxury life you left me behind for was just another scam? Her voice cracked. Daniel, I made a mistake. A big one. I thought you were too safe, too predictable, but I see now that safe is exactly what I needed. I was chasing excitement and ended up humiliated. There was a long silence. I studied her, the once confident woman now deflated, stripped of the arrogance she'd worn like perfume. I'm not here to gloat, I said finally. But I need you to understand something. Marriage isn't about constant excitement. It's about trust. And you broke that before Kevin ever stepped into the picture. Tears welled in her eyes. I know. I don't expect forgiveness. But I want to try again. I shook my head. No, Yvonne. Some doors, once closed, can't be reopened. Not because I hate you, but because I've learned to value myself. And I refuse to be someone's backup plan when their thrill ride crashes. Her shoulders slumped. For a moment, I thought she might argue. But she only nodded, wiped her eyes, and walked toward the door. She paused at the threshold. You were never boring, Daniel. I just didn't appreciate you until it was too late. And then she was gone. In the weeks that followed, I traveled again, not to prove anything to anyone, but because I wanted to. I went hiking in the Drakensberg, visited game reserves I'd only seen on postcards, and even tried scuba diving. Each experience reminded me that life didn't have to be about competing with someone else's dreams, it could be about living your own. One evening, while watching the sunset over the mountains, I thought about Yvonne. I didn't feel anger anymore, just a quiet gratitude that her rejection had pushed me to rediscover myself. Sometimes, the trip you take to prove a point ends up showing you something far more important, that you were never the boring one. You were just with the wrong travel companion. Excitement fades, but respect and loyalty are the true foundations of any relationship. Choosing someone who values stability isn't settling, it's building a life that lasts. And sometimes, walking away is the only way to truly move forward.